Hello, everybody. Hey, Cindy. Hey, Thor.
Hi.
Hi, good to see you again, Thor.
Yeah, good to see you. I see you keep up your good work.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you're all right because I was worried about you. I don't know why. Maybe because we haven't seen you for such a long time.
Yeah, it's true. It's been a busy period.
No, I understand. Totally. I was away too for a while, so I had stopped the meetings for more than a month, maybe. So yeah, good to see you again. Hey, Cindy, you made it.
Yes. But it was very odd because I was on the Zoom earlier and no problem. And then when I went to do the Zoom, it required me to do an update, like immediate. It just like that's how electronics work. It was
I just had the same thing, if that's any consolation. Exactly the same thing. And I was even worried that if I didn't start it a few minutes before the call, I would have had to wait for the update. But yeah, it was lucky. Okay. Hi, Thomas. Good to see you.
Hiya, how you doing?
Good. First time with us.
Oh yeah, it's my first time.
Glad to see you. Hope you like it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Hi, Rigmore. Nice to see you again.
Hi.
Hi. And hi, Katerina. Are you here? How is my sound, by the way?
fine.
Good. Hi, Sam. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Udiko. Hi.
Sam is
Do I pronounce your name right?
You did.
Okay, great.
Yes, you did. Yes.
Okay, I'm happy to see you because you're one of the examples I have picked for today. I hope you.
Yes, I got your email. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so how is everybody today?
Good.
Yeah.
The notes changed, right? Or it changes on the 17th.
No, they already changed.
They changed.
On the 12th.
The
Yes.
12th.
As far as I know. Yeah, I think they did change just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the 14th, but then I think I read that it was the 17th. So anyway, yes, the notes have changed. And it's really interesting on your page that you have listed all the different other people come up. So Forrest came up and he has so much on there to write about, and he was writing about the nodes. Does anybody else read it? Because it was really interesting.
Which one, Cindy?
Well, when I went to your page to register for the class, then it listed many other astrologers, and Stephen Forrest's page was there, and and then it gave all these podcasts that you can watch, and he had the most recent one on the nodes, which was really, really interesting.
Yeah, that article on the notes
Yes.
was really good. And did you notice that he's suggesting that now that the South Node is going to be for almost 2 years in Libra,
Correct.
we basically follow Venus, the path of Venus through the houses and the signs. So I've never even thought of doing that. So I have my nodes in this particular pair. So they're not really back yet, but it's South Node in Libra, North Node in Aries. So I'm planning to follow his advice and see what happens in those months that come. Now, yeah.
It was very interesting.
Yeah, I think so. Well, Stephen Forrest is really the main author I was going to recommend to you today about the moon. There are many books and many different things you can read out there. I'm not going to spend so much time today on books as I did last time, but Stephen Forrest is really what I've been referring to. It's the book of the moon. That's how it's called. Do you know it?
No, but I'll get it.
Check it out. It's on Kindle as well. So the Book of the Moon is really like a manual on so many different things about the moon, not just signs and houses like most of the cookbooks are going to present, but he goes through the phases of the moon, something extremely important and not so much looked at. He basically follows the logic of Dane Rudhyar in the lunation cycle, but he develops his own more accessible way of telling us what these phases might be revealing. And you can read there about the void moon, the fast or slow moon, the out of bounds moon, all those sorts of things which are a bit different, and not every astrologer uses them, but I do, and I'm going to show you today in the examples how you can apply that as well if you want to. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, I just keep admitting a few more people, and we'll start properly in a minute. So I have more of a plan for today. It won't be so improvised as it was last time, because I really wanted to look at two particular examples today and show you how I normally investigate the moon in someone's chart from all sorts of different angles, and see how, when I did that as a homework for these two charts, I think it reveals that you come back to the same place wherever you start looking from. But it's an interesting journey, and I think you would be probably interested to see step by step what I suggest we do. So yeah, more workshop mode today, but I hope you like it. Let's see who is here, who isn't. Just a second. I think only Katerina is trying to enter several times and something's wrong. But most of you are here. So the examples for, hey, hi, no, not you. You are Katerina, and there is a Katerina as well.
Ah, okay.
Yes. How are you, by the way? I haven't seen you for a while.
I'm fine. It's a long time.
Yes.
I haven't had the occasion to follow a class, so I'm happy to join.
Great. How are the Saturdays for you? Because I changed the Saturdays from Sundays.
No, because I discovered the class today through an invitation on Facebook, and
Okay.
I was interested in the subject, so I joined.
Good. Well, it's gonna be every 2 weeks from now on. So we did one 2 weeks ago, and yeah, if you wish to join us, it's gonna be always on Saturday now. For
Depends from my planning, because sometimes I leave for work for 1 week, so it's I have a schedule very
busy schedule.
unstable. Yeah.
Okay, well, when we have those meetings, I record them. I'm recording at the moment, so you will get the recording after that. Because last time there was a bit of confusion, I sent you 2 different emails. So just to let you know, you're going to receive 2 emails from me. One will be for you to look at the recording because you've already paid for today, and you can just watch it on YouTube once it's there. But there will be another email later, maybe a few days later, next week, where I'm actually inviting everybody in my mailing list to purchase the recording if they haven't been already. I mean, if they haven't been here today or didn't know about it. So you don't need to pay again or anything like this. It's just for if you haven't been one of those that were here today. Okay, I hope it makes sense. It's just because there is no way to select. I mean, it's automatically sending it to all of the people in my mailing list. Yeah. Is that all right with you, Stephen? How are you today? I know this was the problem you had last time.
Well, good morning, Radalina. Well, yes. Well, thank you for sharing that note generally, because yes, that caught me as well. So yes, what goes out to everybody goes out to everybody, and then those of us that hear, we get it extra. But what I wanted to mention to you here is my internet connection sometimes breaks frequently. So I might be kicked off of what's happening right now, and then I'll have to re-enter again. So I just wanted to let you know, why is Stephen leaving, coming back? The internet just boots me off.
No problem, Stephen. I will meet you back into the call with you.
All right.
I see you gone. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Hi, Katerina. How is your connection now?
The connection was good. I think I'm having a tech problem. That's why I kept trying to get in, but it's working now on Chrome.
Good. All right. So I think we're almost ready to start because everybody's here now. And hi, Nancy. I didn't say hello to you, I think only.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning here, I guess. Sorry.
You must be in the US if you're saying good morning.
I am.
Whereabouts?
Just outside of Chicago.
Okay, good. Well, you joined just a few minutes ago, did you not?
Yes.
All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Sam, are you here? Hey, Sam, are you here or you're just in the background?
Sorry, Sam is currently stuck in traffic. She will get here as soon as she can.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for letting us know. Okay, so where are we? Talking about the moon today, and I wanted to show you a few other things, a few extra things, which I suspect maybe some of you are not using or not looking at, and to apply them on the charts of Ildiko and Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. Sorry, I actually forgot to say hello. I'm sorry about that.
Hi, how are you?
It's a bit dark. It's a bit dark where you are, and I totally
I know, there we
missed
go.
you.
Very Scorpio.
Yes, hiding as a true Scorpio.
Hi, everybody.
I'm very glad you're both here because you are here for the first time in the group, and I wasn't sure whether you were going to attend today in the live because your charts are so much to the point, and I think they're so good examples of the moon and how the moon can play out from many different sides in us, that I hope you don't mind we take a look at your charts today.
Thank you.
Okay, who do I start with? Are you pressured by time? Did you have to leave or something a little later?
I'll just be moving around. I'll be on my phone for the second half.
You'll be more here on the second half.
I'll be on my phone because I'll be moving around outside.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
So do you prefer I start with your one, or do you want to wait for the second part?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do one. That's fine.
Okay, that was my idea. So I wanted to start with you, Rebecca.
Okay.
And then move on to Ildiko. Yeah?
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to share the chart now and get straight into it without much introduction about what the moon is and all sorts of things like this, because we've spoken about that so many times. And I think the topics will reveal themselves again as we go along with the chart reading. So now we're going to see first Rebecca. Let me know if you can see it all right. And I have muted you all just to make sure the sound is a bit clearer. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to offer you today something like a short method, how to work with the moon if you want to go deep into it. And the moon is, needless to say, so crucial in every chart, regardless of how the moon is positioned in the chart. It is a special planet because it's not really a planet. We are so accustomed to putting it in the list with all the rest of the planets, but if we think about it, this is the satellite of the Earth that's going around us, and she's really affecting so many things in totally different ways from how the other planets are. They're all reflecting the light of the sun, and they are serving as some sort of filter. The biggest filter and the most important filter really is the one of the moon. And it's so important of what's the situation, what's the condition of your moon in the chart, in terms of how you are going to perceive and react to everything that's going on in your life. And in the most immediate, instinctual, straightforward way, it's extremely difficult to control the moon, almost impossible. She has like rules of her own, and she's connected to so many things related to our background, our karmic background as well. Some astrologers claim that she has to do with our past in one way or another. And last time we talked about the lunar nodes, the nodes of the moon. I think this is like a logical continuation of what we discussed last time. And these are the nodes of this particular body, the moon, not of another planet. So we see how this connection between the past and the future really happens at the field of the moon as well. And this time around, the chart is supposed to be ruled, governed, directed by our suns, but the suns don't really function without being translated to us through the prism of the moon as well. So let's look at them together. I believe they always need to be looked at as a pair, as interconnected. And this is some of what we're going to be doing today while looking at the chart. So now I have a list for you. When you first look at the chart, this could be your chart as well. I know we don't have the time to go in so much detail every time, but you might pick up some of those things in my list of, there are 12, 13 points, and use them and not others. But what if we decide now, just for the sake of example, to go through these things one by one, and very soon you'll see what I'm talking about. I will show you that, and I'm going to send you that when I send you the email with the recording for today. You would receive this little list from me as well if you want to use it in your own work. And actually, I will stop the share of the chart quickly. So I show you that, and then I will come back to it again. Oh, the Zoom has also changed the icon of Zoom. So I had trouble finding it on my screen. Okay, so that's it. So what I think we can do is go step by step, really like an investigator, to see what the moon is doing in the chart of Rebecca. And you can do the following. First of all, see whether she was born on the day of the moon. I mean, in my format of the charts that I create, and many different software can do that, even if you just use astro.com, right on the top of the page, it's going to show you on what day of the week the person is born. And I don't know, do you know this about yourself? I was born on Saturday, for example. So I was definitely not born on the day of the moon. I was born on the day of Saturn. But Rebecca, I think you were born on the day of the moon.
Yeah, I was born on a Monday.
Yes, exactly. So in other words, Monday is the day of the moon. And astrology, websites and articles and stuff like that very rarely talk about this. I mean, this is a bit of a forgotten part of astrological analysis. It's not important for many people what day of the, it's also part of those more older systems, but I find it quite useful. I think that we do have something to do with the day of the week in which we were born. And very, very quickly, Monday is the moon, Tuesday is Mars, Wednesday is Mercury, Thursday is Jupiter, Friday is Venus, Saturday is Saturn, and Sunday the Sun. So these are the 7 traditional planets. So obviously this concept is more part of traditional astrology, and most of you know that I do psychological, humanistic approach, but I do integrate that concept as well. So maybe you would see that in this first example of Rebecca, the fact that you're born on the day of the moon just adds up one more place from where we can say the moon is so important in that chart. And it's probably worth noting how you feel every week when we have the day on which you were born, and whether it's in some way adding to the picture of the rest of the influences in the chart. So checking, if you want, whether the person was born on the Monday and whether the moon was void. How many of you use the void moon? Do you know what I'm talking about when I say a void moon? You do, Katerina? Yeah? Anyone else? Is it more something strange, something unknown? Okay, I'll tell you a little bit about it, because at the moment, as we speak, we have a void moon. And this is something I've been following for the last maybe 3-4 years. I downloaded it for myself. I use an iPhone. I don't know what you guys do, but I have an app on my iPhone, which is so handy for checking that thing out. And I'll show you now. I thought we might be talking about this, so I had it here. So there are many, but I use this one. It's called iLuna. It's very simple, very easy. And this is just a calendar, basically, a calendar of the moon as it moves through the month and goes through all the signs of the zodiac in 1 month. You can see here that with colors you can follow, you know, what sign it is in which dates. And you see those little gray areas here in the calendar. I don't know if I can make this any bigger, but yeah. So here in this calendar, there are those gray areas. And these are the moments in the month when the moon is so-called void. A void moon is the moon which has been traveling through a sign, any sign, and it's been making aspects to other things in the sky, but it finished making aspects at some point before it went to the next sign. So there are moments, sometimes those moments are just a few minutes, sometimes they're hours and hours. It could take, I mean, at a time it can take one whole day between the moment when the moon made the last aspect with something and the moment when she moved on to the next sign. So you see, these are void moments, moments of like being in a situation where nothing is really affecting the moon in that particular moment. Well, we can say that she is really affected by the last aspect that she made, whatever that. So if she made, let's say, a trine with Saturn, and that was it, and she didn't make any other aspects until she moved to the next sign, then what happens during these moments of voidness is related to that last aspect that the moon made. Now, why am I telling you all this? I have been following this and I was extremely skeptical about thinking of the void moon moments, and you just need to check them with a calendar like that because they're so erratic. So, I mean, there is no rule here. You just need to check the calendar and see when is the moment when there will be a moon, especially when you're planning for something. You are trying to achieve something or to start something or to initiate an action which you either want to have a result from or not have a result from. So it doesn't work like positive or negative, that everything is bad during a void moon and everything is good when the moon is not void. It's not like that. It's more about nothing coming to an end, nothing coming to a significant result when it is happening on a void moon. So I hope that this doesn't apply to our meeting today. So I'm still hoping that our meeting is going to be positive and somehow good for you and for me and for everybody, despite happening on a void moon. Actually, I didn't post about the meeting. I didn't initiate that event today on a void moon. It's just that while we're meeting, it happens to be during a void moon. And by the way, towards the end of the meeting today, just after 7 o'clock where I am, so that's just like after the first 1.5 hours, it's going to change signs. So at the moment, we are in the last moments of the moon in Cancer. Well, you see, we're talking about the moon today, and it's in its own sign, Cancer, and it's void right in the end of it. And towards the end of today, it's going to move into, or am I wrong about this? Is it Cancer to, no, it's Gemini to Leo. Is it Gemini to Leo? Sorry, I just got confused. I don't know why. I thought it was going to Cancer, but no. Okay, so yeah, it is changing signs. It is void, but it is in Gemini. It is going to go to the next sign. Anyway, going back to the meaning of it. So if you are trying to start something that you want to be having some sort of results, for example, you're starting a business, you're opening a shop. I'm just making it up. Of course, you want that to have a success. You want that to go somewhere, to have clients, to take off, basically. You really don't want to start that on a void moon. Yeah, if you can avoid it, try to avoid it. But if you are meeting a doctor who is supposed to give you a diagnosis, and you're really worried about that because it could be a negative one or something, whatever happens during that meeting, you're guaranteed that you're not going to have any negative results for yourself. It's not going to lead to anything. Or maybe you are involved in a court case and the court case happens, the hearing happens on a day of a void moon or during a time of a void moon. You shouldn't worry that it's going to go the wrong way for you. Yeah, so this is really how the void moon works. And I started following it with this app a couple of years ago or more, and have been following it regularly. Initially, without any expectation and without scheduling anything because of it. But it turned out to be so extremely accurate that it's sometimes scary how accurate this thing is. So don't get like too maniac about it, like kind of paralyze yourself and don't do anything on a void moon. It's actually a very good moment to finish up things, to, do errands, to complete tasks that were already started and things like this. But yeah. Yes, Rebecca.
So would you say it's kind of like a Mercury retrograde in an aspect? Like
maybe there is something similar about it, but I think this is more important. Yeah, because it's so short term, it's extremely powerful in its effect. The Mercury retrograde is a bit more, how can I say, it applies to so many different things more widely. While here, what we're doing here with this void of course moon is we're following the daily travels of the moon, and she is the most quickly changing planet in the sky and in astrology. This is the single factor in your chart which is constantly in movement, and it's very difficult to catch up with it because every two and a half days it's in a new sign. It travels by degrees, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but this is the fastest planet, and it so much corresponds to those conflicting, volatile, often changing moods that mostly we women know what they can cause, but also everybody, men including, have moons and know that this is the thing that can put you off balance very often, because often if we don't do this exercise, or at least partially of what I'm going to offer you today as an exercise for our own chart, and it's so difficult to understand what is moving us in our day-to-day fluctuating emotions and reactions. And especially when the moon is extremely prominent in the chart, like it is in those two examples, we can really be victims of it if we don't learn how to have a really reasonable, healthy strategy towards our moon. So yeah, I do recommend you try to build a strategy, at least as much as you can, but it's impossible to control, as I said. So it's not something that we can once and for all resolve or should consider as a negative. The moon can be our best friend, our best tool for adaptation, for self-care, for self-nurturing and nurturing others, for creating exactly the kind of environment, like designing the kind of environment in which you live your everyday life, which gives you energy and supports the sun, and the other planets in the chart, because ultimately the main role of the moon is to support the sun and the rest of the chart, serving as a clear filter. You can think of the moon as some sort of colored glasses that we wear. Each one of us wears a different color glasses depending on where our moon is and what she's doing, and sometimes they're blurred, sometimes they are like exaggerated. There is something which is twisting our vision. It's not a clear vision of reality, of what really is going on, but it's through the prism, through the filter or the lens of the moon that it is all happening. So the more we know about it, maybe the more we can uncover those unconscious, because she's to do with the unconscious things and memories and emotions, and even those things that we have forgotten that have been affecting us in the moments of childhood when we were totally dependent. The moon is a symbol of dependency as well, and of that part of childhood when we were in the grips of whoever was around, whatever was around, this early childhood environment that really stays with us throughout life as a habit, as a reaction, even if we don't remember anything clear about the early years. Okay, so we check whether the person was born on a void moon, and I was very surprised to find out that only about 2% of the population is born on a void moon. Even though we don't have a void moon only 2% of the time, we have it more often. But it seems like statistically, there are very, very few people who are born on a void moon. Well, I happen to be one of them. So I don't know whether this is good or bad, but from what I've managed to read about this, and I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it sounds true to some extent, is that if you're born on a void moon, your emotional perceptions and reactions and the display of your emotional nature is not exactly as would be expected. There is something odd about it. There is something like you are playing to a different tune a little bit. Well, whether this is good or bad, people say sometimes you feel you look to other people less emotional than you actually are, while in other situations you look like you are overreacting emotionally. So there is something there. But I think that if you're born on a void moon, there is a potential of a little bit of, I mean, I'm biased, obviously, but a little bit more objectivity about emotional matters. Maybe not when it's about you, but when it's about other people, you can probably be a little bit more distanced, because that means that when you were born, the moon was not communicating with any other planet in the sky. She was in a state of maybe in an empty room, basically. So who knows, maybe it's a little bit easier to observe things when you're not, your vision is not clouded by many other things that are, you know, kind of drawing your attention. I don't know. That's just one theory, but you can check that. You can check if you were born on the void moon. Okay, let's move on to my list. So I quickly tell you what we'll be looking at in the chart, and then we'll do it. We'll do it for real. So then the second thing is to check whether another strange concept that I know you may not be familiar with, whether the moon in the chart is out of bounds. You might already be thinking, why is she telling us all those extras and all those strange things? But check it out if you want. You'll see that someone with an out of bounds moon really has to pay attention to their moon. And it's similar to the void moon, but a lot more extreme. So that's to do with the concept of declination. I'm not going to explain that now here. You can check it out. But there are tables. If you check your chart, you would see all sorts of tables there. And one of those tables, you'll say declination. Just check the table there and see what's the number that is shown against your moon. It will be some sort of number. The only thing you need to check is whether that number is over 23. If it's 23 and a little bit, then that means that your moon is out of bounds, out of boundaries, out of the boundaries of the rulership of the sun in one way or another. Well, if you go into what declination is, you would see why it's related to whether the sun is controlling that moon enough or not. So someone born with out of bounds moon or another planet, but we're only talking about the moon here, is someone who emotionally is a bit rebellious, a bit, the moon is basically doing her own thing. I can see you're smiling, Cindy, because you have one of the most out of bounds moons that I've ever seen. I know that. But yes, it's any out of bounds planet is basically either a little bit mad, a little bit crazy, you know, or genius. It could be any of the two extremes or something in between. But there is something unruly about out of bounds planets. They are not yet very appreciated, but since I've been following them and checking whether someone has an out of bounds planet, Stephen is a record holder here, because you, Stephen, have 4 out of bounds planets, including the moon. So I don't know whether to say congratulations or condolences about this, but it is eccentricity, you know, in one way or another. I know we are oversimplifying, but I don't know what that means really, but I can see how people that have out of bounds planets are sometimes not like from this planet. They have something extra to offer. So I would stop by just saying that out of bounds moon could be a moon even more difficult to control than just a normal, not out of bounds moon, because Stephen Forrest, for example, says that out of bounds planets are like teenagers whose parents have gone on holiday and have left them alone in the house. And now they can do whatever they want. And they usually just make a party or create a mess out of it. So they feel uncontrolled by the centralizing conscious principle yeah, of the chart. So if the moon is like this, she's going to be sending some very mixed messages to the sun, and she would probably sometimes be trying to lead a separate life from the sun. Okay, let's move on. After checking, yeah, you can also check whether the moon was moving fast or slow in that moment. Usually the program can just show you that, you know, the moon is fast or the moon is slow. I'm not really sure, again, what's the difference, but again, what Stephen Forrest claims is that simply as the moon is our tool of quick reacting in general to whatever is going on around us, sometimes it's really reacting quicker, thinking more quickly, but to be thinking more quickly doesn't mean you are more intelligent or that your thinking is the correct thinking for the situation. You might be totally wrong and just rushing into something. But people with fast moons tend to be reacting more fast, you know, quicker to those with slow moons, and to be, you know, more agreeable in terms of revealing more of themselves more quickly, because the moon is usually hiding something. You know, this is this part of us, this planet which reveals itself the last. It's cautious about revealing because it's usually afraid of being heard or being somehow vulnerable, because it is the most vulnerable. But people with fast moons don't have that blockage so much. They usually jump into it more quickly. Sometimes they regret it, but that's a different story. People with slow moons, and I'm so happy that today's examples, the two charts, one is slow, the other one is fast. So I hope we can see whether that works. And then the next thing I would look at is, and you can probably notice that I'm not going straight away, when I start looking at the chart, I'm not going straight away at what is the sign of the moon and what is the house of the moon. That comes a little later. And hopefully I can convince you that this is a better way to do it than jump straight into the sign and the house. Then the next thing I'm going to look at is the phase of the moon. The other lost dimension of astrology, you know, not just what's the sign, what's the house, but what's this special relationship? What was it at the moment of your birth between the sun and the moon? Or what was the phase of the moon under which you were born? And that gives you like another description of personality, another way of doing things in life, which is revealing quite a lot. And so the cycle, the so-called lunation cycle, that's what I'm talking about. This monthly cycle between every new moon, when they are together, they are conjuncting the sun and the moon, then the moon goes forward because she's so much faster, and she travels through different phases of their relationship. You know, they sit at different angles to one another. We have the first quarter, we have the opposition, which is the full moon, the culmination of the cycle. Then we get the second part of the cycle, and so on and so forth. And usually we look at 8 phases of the moon, which are 8 different personality types. So I would like to check quite in the beginning of my analysis of a chart, which phase of the 8 this person belongs to. And because this is basically how their sun is reflected by their moon, how their moon works with the energy that the sun gives her. What is the moon doing with the solar energy, and in what way? Are they early in their relationship, or are they late in their relationship, or whereabouts are they in this relationship? So that's quite crucial. And then when we see that, you know, the moon is somewhere, the sun is somewhere. So it's good to register in which houses of the chart this relationship is playing out from. Next point, just have a glance at the chart and see whether the moon is angular on the ascendant, descendant, IC or MC, because if she is, she automatically becomes a very important planet, one that's taking over a lot of the other functions in the personality, and there will be no way to ignore her. Whether she's a singleton planet, I mean, this is going to be something quite rare, and to be a singleton means that all the other planets are somehow in one part of the chart, like grouped together, and she's isolated in another part of the chart. She might not be exactly opposite all the other planets, but she's kind of away from them. So if this is the case, then again, this moon becomes very important, like she's spotlighted. Another way she can be spotlighted is if she's ruling the ascendant, which means if you have Cancer ascendant, basically. Yeah, so if someone has a Cancer ascendant, but maybe also if they have a Cancer descendant or IC or MC, if you choose to give enough, equal importance to all the 4 angles and not just to the ascendant, that's up to you. Then finally, if she's part of a stellium, so if there are many planets in the same sign and she's one of them, yeah, so she's part of a big team, a big group, she's mixed up with those planets, because if that's the case, most likely she's kind of mixing herself with them, and all of those other planets become lunar as well because they are so mixed up with the moon. Yeah, for example. Next thing I would look at is, now we are getting more to the point, what aspects is the moon itself making in the chart? Who else is she talking to? What lines connect her to the other planets? And I look that before I look at sign and house, because for me, the shape of the chart, the overall picture of the chart, how it's kind of distributed, everything there in the circle, is more important. So we start trying to have more like a whole picture view, a holistic view of the person before we start breaking things into pieces. And when we then look at the sign, the house, and all the rest of it, then we'll be doing that, breaking it into pieces. But if you start with the pieces, it's going to be much more difficult to make sense of the whole chart than if you start with the bigger picture. So take a look at how many relationships does the moon have in that chart? Does she make just a couple of aspects, or is she making a lot of aspects, or maybe she could be totally unaspected? And that's rare again. But if that happens, again, she becomes very important because she's unaspected. Okay, next thing is, and part of that thing about aspects is the aspects in the chart, are they creating some sort of interesting shape? So like a triangle or a mystic rectangle or a grand cross or something of that sort. Be on the watch out for that. Next thing I'm going to see is, and we need to move down this a little bit. So now next I'm going to take a look at the house, in the area of life where the moon is going to have to live itself, display itself the most. Which part of life or activity will we be most emotionally connected to and needed to be part of our life? Next, the sign. And when I check the sign, I check the degree. And so say if the moon is in Aquarius, not just Aquarius, but what degree of Aquarius she's in. And I go and check what's the Sabian symbol for that degree. And that Sabian symbol usually can give me a lot of personal information about what this moon is really dealing with. Yeah, and it could be extremely revealing. Hopefully you'll see when we look at the examples in a minute. We're almost at the end of the list. It's not such a long one, but then I'm trying to give you the moon from every single angle I can think of. And this is just what I know. Maybe there is more. But then I would say, check what is the planet which is ruling the sign in which the moon is in. So, for example, if the moon is in Capricorn, we are looking at Saturn. So what sign is Saturn? What sign is Saturn in that same chart? And this is like I think there's a concept by Stephen Arroyo of following like a trail, going from one planet to the other. In this logic, I think he's calling it secondary influence. So you have your moon, whatever that is, in a sign, and you usually would think of it through that sign. But there is an underlying influence under that sign, a secondary one, which sometimes is equally important as this first one. And that's the sign of where the planet that rules that one is. So for example, if Saturn is in, your moon is in Aquarius or in Capricorn, you look at Saturn, but you find Saturn in Scorpio, for example. So your moon ends up being Saturnian and Scorpionic at the same time. Is that making sense to you? So basically the ruler of the sign in which the moon is in. Then what aspect ruler makes might also be important. And then the next point now switches to progressions. And that's not the personal chart as such, but the technique of progressions. And you can use that or not use that. But I feel the progressed moon is such an important influence in our lives that we should at least mention it. More towards the end, but we should mention it. So just have a look at the progress chart of that person, especially if you are an astrologer and it's about timing. So if you have a consultation with someone and they have reached out to you exactly at that moment, so it is quite important what's going on in their life in that moment when they are searching for answers or looking for help or wanting to talk to you, whatever. Or maybe that's just yourself now feeling the urge to do more investigation about your chart. If you check out where is your progressed moon at that moment, that would give you the most information about at what stage of your life you're at, short term, what is occupying your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your attention, what is it really that you need to pay attention to, and the aspects that this progressed moon is making to things in your personal chart, in the natal chart, is like a big activator. This progressed moon could be such a big activator, like a transit of a big planet. It's very comparable of urging you to take a look at something, another planet in which it's making an aspect to, which needs to be resolved. Something needs to be looked at the moment. Then this progressed moon is part of another, lunation cycle of a kind, a cycle of the relationship between the moon and the sun, but now not the one that, is currently going on, but in your progressions. So basically you're looking at in what way are your progressed sun and your progressed moon related? At what stage of their cycle they are at the moment? Have they recently met? And if they have recently met in a new, what we call progressed new moon thing, then that's hugely important because that's an event once every 30 years. And when that happens, you need to really see it and try to understand what that's trying to tell you, because that's a new beginning, big time in your lifetime. But wherever else they are in their mutual cycle together, it might be important. They might be in a trine, that might be in a square, or something like this. So take a look at whether an important aspect is now happening in that lunation cycle. And finally, we go back to the beginning, the daily moon. So following the daily moon is like following the emotional weather forecast. What's going on with the weather forecast for everybody at the same time? But I would look at that last, because I would have needed to see all this information about the moon of the person that we did so far and how to feel about that moon and about that chart. And then when I see how the moon moves through the month, to all the signs, and by doing that, she's moving to all the houses of the person's chart and touching every single planet there and every single point. So I would know what to expect that short-term influence of the moon to be triggering in the person. So some people feel very bad every month when the moon is in Sagittarius, for example, because they have something in their chart which is sensitive to that Sagittarius point, and not in a good way, in a painful way. Well, they have other moons, say moon in whatever, in Taurus, in Gemini, you can pick whatever you like, that they always feel more relaxed, more, kind of emotionally left alone and not triggered. So you can explore that for yourself and see how it works. I forgot something, which is really should have been number one in the list. And I don't know why I didn't include it here. I should have, it was just a total mess, but I did it for the two people. There is another moon, another important moon that I suggest you take a look at. And that's the new moon before you were born. Do you use that? Anyone using that at all? The new moon before birth. Stephen, I think you probably are. No, you're not? Okay, I'm surprised. Okay, let me tell you about that. So when you were born, there was a new moon at some point before that. Maybe just hours before that, or days before that, or weeks before that. But there was a new moon. So you were born under one cycle of the moon, this same lunation cycle we talked about, 28-day period, which started somewhere. It started with a new moon and then finished with the next new moon. You were born somewhere within such a cycle. So if you check what was the last new moon that was on the sky before you were born, this is like an initial impulse, like a theme, a leitmotif of the lifetime of the person, of all those people that were born during that month. Yeah, but in a different way. And if you check the Sabian symbol of the degree in which that new moon happened, so the sun and the moon met in the same degree somewhere in the sky. And if you check the Sabian symbol, you would see a picture, a situation, which I can bet you would be able to relate to in one way or another. The moment you read this symbol, you would know why this somehow, or it will sound familiar, or it will sound like something that you can recognize as a dynamic, as a pattern that it's really like a background in your life. It's something like it's taken for granted. And you can say, yeah, I know what that's about. This is always the reaction I'm getting when I share with someone their new moon before birth. So let's go to the chart now. I'm sorry, Rebecca, it took so long, but I think this introduction was needed to now see what we are doing with the chart. I will send you this list, so you don't need to remember all that. But now, this is Rebecca's chart. Are you still with us, Rebecca?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Okay. You know, I picked you because of many reasons, but first of all, you have exactly the same sun as me, 0 degrees Scorpio. So
Oh, wow.
I thought that's an interesting coincidence. And you were not born on the same day as me, though. You were born on the 22nd of October. I was born on the 24th of October. And you are such a rare case because usually the sun every year enters the sign, the new sign, in a different day, on a different day, sometimes on the 23rd of October, sometimes on the 24th of October. You are quite rare because it's very rarely on the 22nd. So yeah, that was very interesting. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, 0 degrees Scorpio. But yeah, that's just part of it. Now, look at the top of this is just my way of doing the chart, but it has all the things, all the bits that we need for today for the moon. So if you look at the top here, you see this table, the extra ring points. Right at the top, it says new moon. So this is the new moon of Rebecca before birth. So you are a Scorpio sun with all those planets in Scorpio. You have the moon in Libra, in the sign before, but the new moon before you were born was not in Scorpio, it was in Libra. So this is the important piece of information here, that was at 2 degrees Libra, which is somewhere here, you know, more towards the beginning of Libra. So days, many days before you were born, almost 1 whole month before you were born, there was a new moon. And that happened in Libra. And then both of them, the sun and the moon, moved forwards. They moved on. We now find at your birth, the sun is already in Scorpio. The moon is still in Libra, it's already in Libra. But we have like a situation here where you have a bit of 2 signs. At least that's how I interpret it. You have the Scorpio sun, but also you have the Libra thing going on. Because you guys can have 2 scenarios here, only 2 different scenarios. One is the new moon before your birth happened in the same sign as the sun, or in the previous sign. Yeah, only these 2 options. So Rebecca has the option of 2 different things. The new moon in Libra, but the sun is in Scorpio. So this sun in Scorpio is not going to be purely, fully, totally inhabiting that sign and, you know, kind of being in that sign only, because there is this dragging history and this background of the new moon in Libra, because the life is still under the influence of that cycle of the sun and the moon, which started in Libra about a month before that. Okay, is that making sense?
Yes.
So here we have our clue number one, that you are quite a big mix between Libra and Scorpio, despite having so many planets in Scorpio and just the moon in Libra, but the moon itself is in Libra. Okay, then let's begin with the list of things that we're looking at. Are you born on a void moon? No, you're not. Yeah, you're not one of those rare cases of it. If you were born on a void moon, here in the middle, in the little table where it says considerations, it would have been written there that the moon is void. Were you born on a out of bounds moon? Also no, because if your moon was out of bounds, you see here is your moon, 12 Libra. It is fast, yeah. So you should be one of those quick reacting people, more spontaneous, more out. Probably it's got something to do with extroversion and introversion. I don't know. But the fact is your moon is fast, but it's not out of bounds, because if it was out of bounds, this here would have been red. Yeah, marked in red completely, like, or actually in purple, like this, like Mars is. So you have out of bounds Mars, but not moon in your chart. Okay?
Okay.
Can you all see that? Can you see where I'm looking and what that's all about? All right.
Yes.
So next thing we want to take a look at is the lunation cycle. So what's the phase of the moon? So how to figure that out? You can calculate it, but you can just go on the website and it's going to tell you. You were born under, you know, for example, new moon or full moon or first quarter, second quarter, whatever. In this case, we have the sun in Scorpio and the moon is behind it. So she's the one, because she's faster than the sun, she's the one that's basically making one full circle around the zodiac and going back to the sun. So in this chart, we see the moon approaching the sun from behind. Yeah. So last month in Libra, they met together. They were both in Libra. Then they continued that way because everything is moving that way, counterclockwise. And the moon now has made almost one full circle and about to come back to the sun. So they join hands again. They make another new moon, another conjunction, but this time it's going to be in Scorpio. Then the next month, they're going to do the same in Sagittarius. Then the next month in Capricorn and so on. So, but this time, the moment when you were born, that stop motion photograph is showing us the moon slowly approaching the sun from behind and almost at the end of their cycle together. This in astrology is called the balsamic phase, the last phase, the 8th one of the cycle of the sun and the moon together. And there is something, we won't have the time, we only have 2 hours today, so there isn't time to go very much in depth about what that phase means, but just a few clues. The fact that this is the very last phase makes it very mysterious, makes it very spiritual potentially, and extremely intuitive, because this is almost like we have someone very old. The moon here at that point of the cycle with the sun is very old. She has traveled through all the signs of the zodiac. She has seen it all. She has basically kind of lived like a lifetime of different stages, different ages, where there were struggles along the way. There were things to, you know, go through and then things to consider. And now she's ready to come back to source, to basically come back to the beginning and start a new cycle. And she's very full of experience, of emotions, of impressions, of memories. You know how very old people, like people in their 80s, 90s, they sometimes start remembering extreme details about their earlier life. Have you experienced that? Maybe with grandparents or people? Like out of a sudden, we would expect that the memory is not so strong anymore at late life, but there are also those instances of remembering very detailed things in the very last years. And this is to do with that. Also, it's so intuitive that sometimes it's called those so-called meetings with ghosts experiences, maybe literally or not. It's very typical for someone born under that phase of the moon, even when you're young, when you're a child or early in life, to be either a bit wiser, somehow knowing something you don't know from where, or looking forward to later years, strangely, instead of being constantly worried that you're getting old, maybe you sense that there is something positive for you in later life, and you feel like you would be more adapted to later life than younger life. I don't know. And you are able to pick up on those strange sometimes occurrences or spiritual occurrences that, or maybe we can even say that you have this extra sensitivity or receptivity, which could be a little psychic. And if you do have psychic experiences, you shouldn't fear them. You should know that they are totally normal with having the sun and the moon in this relationship together, especially down there at the bottom of the chart. And now we move on to the next part of the picture. Where is this going on? Because you can have the sun and the moon positioned like this, like in the last phase of the relationship, but it doesn't have to be the third and the fourth house. It could be anywhere. But in your case, it's the third and the fourth house. We're almost having like a journey. The moon is now in the third house, and she's trying to go back to the sun, who is waiting for her in the fourth house. So the moon is also trying to make a transition between these two houses. She needs to live through experiences which are very, very personal, very deep down, maybe hidden, maybe related to this circle that you have drawn around yourself, which is only your private circle and nobody's allowed in. And that's where the magic happens of this relationship of closure. There is something to do with closure in the balsamic moon. Something even of a religious experience, some people say. Yeah, it's very heavy as well. It's very heavy, as the task here is to make a transition between life and death. Don't take it literally, but that's how it feels. It feels like it's been traveling through a lifetime of physical incarnation here on Earth and the moon. And now she is going back to source, and she's not feeling like she's dying necessarily once and for all, but that there is something new, a new beginning in the horizon that she's also looking forward to. So the feelings of that moon are very big connection with memories, with the past. The past is extremely important, but equally important is the upcoming future. So it's almost like you're on a rope trying to balance between, in this threshold between the past and the future. Okay, so this is a very mysterious, very enigmatic phase of the moon. And then we looked at the houses quickly, but later on we'll see a bit about the third house, because the third house is where the moon actually is sitting in this current lifetime, and that'll be important. Then the fifth one, what was the fifth one? Let me just take a look. Okay, now we go back to the shape of the chart and see. So I'm just trying to go back to it. Lost you for a moment. Okay, so now you guys still see the chart, right? It hasn't disappeared. No? All right, because it did on my side. Okay, so now is the moon angular? I think it is. Even though it's in the third house, it's quite close to the IC. Can you see that? So we can say that the pull, the magnet of the fourth house is already quite strong. And how many degrees? So we have the moon at 12 degrees and the IC is at 18 degrees, but still I think we can safely say that she is conjunct the IC, and we know that the area of the IC is the one that we normally connect to the moon. So that makes it extra important. She's not just close to an angle, but she is close to her own angle. So that moon really wants to go in. She really needs to discover something in the private world. She really is going to be digging into the past to find some sort of closure there. And that's accentuated in that chart. She's not part of a stellium, even though these planets in Scorpio that create a stellium, they are, I think they're kind of pulling the moon. They're kind of trying to drag the moon towards them. That's how I see it. Because she, in her travels back to the sun, she's actually traveling back to all of them. And in her relationship with all of them, she's closing a cycle. So she's really kind of expected to come back home. And all of those planets in Scorpio are home in the fourth house, in the physical home or real home or emotional home, however we want to think about it. And that is the house which rules the moon, or the moon rules that house, and whatever we want to say. Okay, I think Rebecca is now coming back. Hi, Rebecca. Are you back? Did you miss a lot of it?
No, I've been here.
Okay, good.
I'm just
Well,
on my
you
phone
can
now.
always
I've been here
watch
the whole time.
You can always watch it later. So yeah, so we are, I think, at that point when I wanted to just point your attention to the fact that there were so many planets in the fourth house, and that's another reference back to the moon. There are so many things so far that point us to the moon. Another big one, the ascendant is in Cancer. Is it really in Cancer, Rebecca, your ascendant?
Yes, 29 degrees.
Yeah, because it's so close to the boundary. I was wondering because you know, people use different house systems and stuff like that, and maybe in other systems it could fall in Leo, but I have a feeling that it's in Cancer. And now that I saw you on the camera for just a few seconds, I have a very brief impression, and I believe this is more likely to be a Cancer ascendant. But yeah, another pointer to the moon. So the moon rules the chart and rules the ascendant. So that's extremely important, isn't it? Okay. Any other way in which, I mean, I think that's quite enough. I mean, that's quite a lot already. So I was just looking at your notes. Yeah, conjunct the IC. Now let's look at the aspects of the moon. What sort of communication channels are activated from the moon to the other planets? And I use the table for it's a bit difficult to see on the wheel exactly everything that's going on, but when you look at that table, you can just follow the column of the moon, and there are 4 aspects. The closer the aspect is, the more pronounced the effect will be. That's the general rule. So we have a very important square here with Mars, because these are 2 personal planets. The moon is by itself, you know, very agitated by the contact with Mars. Mars is another very instinctual, direct and explosive energy. So these 2 are related in the chart with a very tight square. And that square is a waning square. I mean, I'm not going to go into this today because I don't want to confuse you too much, but there are 2 types of squares that planets can make to each other: a waxing square and a waning square. The waxing square is more, we can expect some sort of action. Yeah, almost like it's Martian. The relationship is Martian. They'll be fighting, they'll be arguing, or they will be at cross purposes to each other. And there will really be, in real life situations, a desire to reconcile, because there are the interests of 2 different parties, in this case the moon and Mars. But that's not the case here. In this chart, the square is a weighting square, which is more Jupiterian in its nature. Jupiterian means it's more about beliefs and attitudes. So when there is a conflict, the conflict is not, I want to do that and you're preventing me from doing it, so I'm going to fight you. It's, I believe this, but you believe something else. I have that strategy, you have another strategy. And we are more clashing in our consciousness than in our actions. So here, the moon and Mars, there is some sort of disagreement going on. There is tension, there is conflict, but it may not be so easy to see on the surface. It might be more, something in your life, Rebecca, which is to do with you feeling threatened maybe by something. And that fear may not be displayed. Maybe it's bottled up, maybe it's hidden. And you may need to, I don't know, resolve it in a way which is more internal than external. This is just a suggestion, but we need to look more closely to Mars and all the rest of the things going on to see. So
Okay, thank you.
That Mars square is, if you want to go on the internet or pick up a cookbook on astrology or something like that, just to dig deeper into Mars square the moon, because not only it's exactly square, like 0 degree, no, the orb is extremely tight, but we don't have that many squares in that chart. Yeah, I mean, there is a square on the other side, also exactly the part of fortune, but the part of fortune is not a planet, it's a point. It is also important, but you can, for a moment, you can even not look at it. But as far as communicating with another planet is concerned, this is the top one, the top aspect as a whole in your whole chart, not just in regards to the moon. Yeah, as it's really standing out. And so the issues of courage, expressing your will, expressing your desires, being able to stand up for yourself, or the other way around, dealing with your own way of expressing aggression, whether it's too much or it's not enough. We don't know exactly what's going on in your life. Maybe if you want to, in a minute, share, because I will eventually stop talking and I'll give you the word and I'll give you a chance to give us a bit of feedback about yourself. But this is just like, I wanted to demonstrate to you and to everybody what I would do on my own when I don't know the person, and I just use the information in the chart by doing that. And then how things will either match up with what you would share or not so much, we would see. But Mars is, by the way, out of bounds on top of everything else in that chart. So going back to what I told you about the teenagers left alone and so on. So Mars in your chart is a teenager like that. And who could be more feared than Mars? Because Mars is the one that we can expect quite a lot of problems from when it goes wrong. Yeah, it's the planet of physical expression and energy and aggression. So yeah, something to pay attention to. Now, another aspect, going back to our table, because Mars is conjunct Jupiter in the chart, so obviously the moon will be square Jupiter as well. So Mars, Jupiter, both square the moon, but Jupiter not so much as Mars. But already we can see that there is some sort of excess going on. Something is too much here. Anything that Jupiter touches becomes a bit like exaggerated. So that effect of the Mars on the moon is further exaggerated by the Jupiter next to it. So it's like the moon is already under so much pressure. And she is not feeling very stable for that reason, I would suspect. Yeah. Next thing is something a bit more positive, the sextile to Uranus. You can see it here. Yeah. And so Uranus is in Sagittarius, exactly like 31 degrees from the moon. So maybe we can think of that as a bit of a, I don't know, breath of fresh air. Who knows? Uranus is never easy to deal with completely. You know, he's the shocker at the end of the day. He's agitating the moon as well, but maybe more in a stimulating way. So whatever is here in the 5th house with, you know, the planets in the 5th house, and especially Uranus, Venus is also part of the picture. They are stimulating the moon in a way that maybe it's inspiring, maybe it's openness to the topics of Uranus, so not having a big problem of things being a little bit different, a little bit out of the ordinary. So yeah, we can think of that. And then there is a trine to Chiron finally. So Chiron is on the other side here with the North Node. So even though it's not in the same sign like the North Node, Chiron is quite important because Chiron is a singleton in that chart. So we found that the moon wasn't a singleton, but Chiron is, because Chiron is the only planet on that side of the chart, while all the rest of the planets are grouped together at the bottom. So that's a very interesting shape. And Chiron will inevitably be, whatever that Chiron means in this chart, that would be a point of expression of the planets underneath. It's like a funnel. Yeah, so it's like Chiron is at the top of the funnel, and whatever you put in the funnel from the planets underneath, it's going to come out from Chiron. So that's a huge deal. I mean, Chiron is a big deal in this chart. I know we're not talking about Chiron today, but Chiron is communicating with the moon. The well-being of the moon depends on Chiron, and it depends on all the rest of the planets that she is in touch with. And we have this nice trine there. So hopefully the moon can also express herself through Chiron. So something to do with Gemini, with the 11th house. We already see quite a lot of air, pointing towards quite a lot of air, and the moon itself is in air, in Libra, in the 3rd house, another air position. So I guess working through the air elements could be a good outlet, a good way of expressing yourself. And now let's talk about the sign, because I think we can already talk about the actual sign, Libra, in which the moon is in. So it will be easier or more difficult to display this sign, how can I say, archetypally, the way we expect from the sign in general. Depending on what we saw so far, whether the moon is more stressed out, whether she's more prominently positioned, because if she is prominently positioned, she just acts and she's like the star of the show more than the other planets. But if she's more like subdued and hidden somewhere, then the fact that she's in Libra may not be so easy to see. In your case, because the moon is so prominent, from all sorts of different angles, ruling the ascendant, conjunct the IC, everything that we said so far, this Libra influence should be carefully checked. And I don't have a clue usually. I don't know where to start thinking about this. In what way is that Libra acting? And how are you being a Libra? Are you being a positive Libra or negative Libra? And I look at the Sabian symbol to give me a little bit more clues. So the Sabian symbol for this is called the 13th degree of Libra, because it says 12 degrees and 50 minutes, which means the 13th degree of Libra. And that degree is children blowing soap bubbles. It's a symbol, children blowing soap bubbles. So I'm just going to be telling you what comes to my mind. This is totally open interpretation. It's a symbol. This is astrology. There is no right or wrong here, but just you need to use your imagination and your intuition if you want to do that. And maybe ask the person, and I will ask you later what to think about it. But the symbol contains the word children. So it's like a little reference to the moon. We are our moons when we are children, more than anything else. Those children are playing, they are blowing the soap bubbles, but this is like a very light playing, isn't it? It's not some sort of complicated game or some sort of mental game. It's more like on the surface, they are messing around and they're doing that, experimenting, maybe just having fun very lightly. So there is this kind of lightness in that symbol. So we find the moon in the 3rd house. This symbol sounded to me a little bit like the 3rd house, because I know I may be making it up because I would like it to be matching this way, but don't you agree that the child play is something that we very often can find in the Gemini archetype or the 3rd house archetype? This sort of youthfulness, spontaneity of youthfulness, of having the freedom to just, you know, try different things and ask questions and go around and talk and so on. And in the 3rd house, that's what we're doing when we're young. So the 3rd house is referring back to this stage of life when we were learning how to communicate, when we were exploring the world for the first time, when we were really immersed in the atmosphere, in the environment, and the key word is the environment of those things around us, parents, extended family, friends, relatives, you know, the place where we were living and the stimulations, intellectual and otherwise, from that place. So from childhood, it must have been very important for you in a good or bad way. I mean, it is affecting you. This environment in which you had to grow up in was crucial, and maybe still crucial for you. And dealing with those everyday communication strategies to get what you want, to put things in order, to be in good terms with your neighbors, for example, or your brothers and sisters and those that are around you. Just that so you can survive, you can feel like things are fine, you're dealing with the situation in a good way. So your moon is super alert towards adaptation with the environment, and needs to be in a good adaptation with the environment, and in such a way that it doesn't feel threatened and it doesn't feel stifled. Like there needs to be a way to express. And looking at the square to Mars and Jupiter in the 6th house, I would suppose that maybe in childhood atmosphere, there might have been something of a restriction to that spontaneity, or maybe you are too afraid to go too far. And we know how Libra tries to read the situation, tries to read other people so that it adapts its response towards them. And so the moon in Libra is not the most spontaneous moon in general, because it needs to find a way to please the other, as it's thinking that its own safety, its own well-being is subject to the other person's response. So it's extremely sensitive to all sorts of relationships. But here I wouldn't put the accent to intimate relationships, even though they are part of it as well, but more relating with people on day-to-day basis, and especially with close family and the environment around your, like in your little town or little neighborhood kind of boundaries. So that's where we can expect conflicts to come about. That's where we can expect you to be extra sensitive towards those things, and where the drama can unfold, really. So this is just a quick direction towards the house and the sign. Now, it might be that the description of that children blowing soap bubbles, this degree, the description by Linda Hill in the website, is talking about something like the person being a bit unhappy that things remain too shallow, too on the surface, and that you are not able to have deeper conversations. Here, the 3rd house and Libra require one-to-one conversation more than anything else, communication. And with all those planets you've got in Scorpio, I suspect that there might be an issue, really, of the moon not being able to go deep enough, having too many, annoying small things to deal with, kind of everyday chores or very petty details. Also look at the square from the 6th house, everyday life management, yeah. And 3rd house is very much like this, so mercurial, so like all over the place. And this might be something you don't like. This Libra might be craving for deeper connection, for deeper relationships, something, you know, more philosophical or emotional, especially when we now know that it's in this last stage of its cycle. It's like a grown-up wise man having to play with the children and having to stay with people who are also grown-ups, but they're childish. These are just pictures in my head that come from seeing this whole thing going on together. You would tell me in a minute whether I'm right or wrong. And then just quickly to note, we're not going to stay on this very much, but the moon in Libra is ruled by Venus. So Libra, Venus connection. Let's take a look at where is Venus. Venus is in Sagittarius and together with Uranus and opposite Chiron. And what else is she doing? And trying the part of fortune and trying the Saturn. So what happens here is that Venus, that's connected to Libra with the moon, is making aspects to the same planets that the moon is making aspects. All the same players are involved. So the usual suspects are involved with both of those planets, even though the moon itself is not in an aspect with Venus, if you take a look at that. But do you notice that they're making pretty much the same contacts, but in a different way? So yeah, Venus has to be taken a look at if you want to resolve the moon. And then we have, I think we're taking so long already, aren't we? So I will move on to the next example more quickly. Let's take a look now very quickly at the progressed moon, the current situation. And then I will give Rebecca the words to give us a bit of feedback before we move on to the other chart. And this is now, do you see the next wheel? Or do I need to? Yeah, okay. So this is in the middle, Rebecca's chart, the same one. We have the green one, the transits, and the blue one, the progressions. So the only thing we're interested in here is the progressed moon, which happens to be in 16 degrees Pisces at the moment. And question is that important or is it not so important right now? It stays in the same degree for 1 month. So currently, Rebecca, you are in the month of your life where you are affected by the moon being in 16 degrees. Oh, sorry about that. I'm trying to do something else here. 16 degrees Pisces. So the Sabian symbol for that degree is an Easter promenade, some sort of celebration with a group, with family maybe, which is reinforcing traditions and something that you have in common, something that you're all like wanting to celebrate. This is roughly what that symbol is about. So maybe that somehow has to do with your current month. Yeah, the degree in which the progressed moon is located every month is giving us some sort of information about the topics and the things that we need to deal with or pay attention to in this particular month of our life. Now, what aspects is that progressed moon making to the planets in the personal chart? It's very difficult to see here, so I have created that little table. You can see only the second column, only the moon. This is the progressed moon. So that vertical column, and we just follow down and see who is she now speaking to in the chart. And she's speaking to Mars again, but that's not a square, that's a sextile. So I'm not going to go through the other aspects. This is just kind of a guideline how to do it. If you want to go into the other aspects, take a look at them too. But what we can discover is that the original moon in the chart in Libra is in a very tight lifetime, ongoing relationship with Mars. And it's got a lot of nuances about it. Now, at this stage of your life, Rebecca, you have the same relationship. So currently, your current state of the moon, which is the progressed moon, how at that point of your life you're feeling about things or in what wavelength you are, is also speaking to Mars, but now as a sextile, which is a much more positive, stimulating, and kind of optimistic aspect, one that, you know, kind of opens the door for opportunity. So this is kind of a way you can spot that emotionally, now is a good time to tackle the Mars. Yeah, now is a better time than another time, if I can put it that way, because now it's more likely that this is going to give you a chance to make some progress with whatever the problem might be with the Mars than another time. And I think this could be very powerful information to know in terms of timing. Then finally, what is the state of the progressed cycle? So what I mean here is, where is the progressed moon in relationship to the progressed sun? Now it's not this chart. Sorry about that. I'll show you this chart in a moment, but go back to this chart. Looking at the blue wheel. So we have the progressed sun is in 8 degrees Sagittarius. The progressed moon is currently 16 Pisces, as we just saw. And this is like, if we look at that, one is Sagittarius, the other one is Pisces, but they have recently made a square, basically. Yeah, recently the moon was in 8 Pisces. Just 8 months ago, she was in 8 Pisces. And she was then making an exact square to the progressed sun. And that was the Martian kind of square. You know, that the first one that happens in the cycle, the one where there is some sort of real life struggle going on. And if you go back about 8 months, and still, this is still going on because the square is still active, but it's already kind of passing. But the peak of that square was about 8 months ago, where the progressed sun and the progressed moon had reached the first major turning point in their current life cycle. And that life cycle began with a new moon, what we call a progressed new moon, that happened for you on the 24th of June 2015. And I have calculated the chart for that moment. This was the chart, the progressed chart of that date when the last common relationship between the sun and the moon began. And this cycle is 30 years. So it's extremely important cycle to, if you want to learn about this, if you want to follow this, it's extremely revealing, because in 2015, the sun and the moon by progression were both together at 0 degrees Sagittarius. Here you can see that on that date. And from then until now, they have traveled 1/4 of their cycle, 1/4. And now they're in a square, because currently the sun is in 8 Sagittarius, while the moon is in 16 Pisces today. Well, this is 2015, but today they are already in the first square of their mutual cycle. So, okay, I'm going to stop here. You can go deeper into this, but just finally, for you mostly, Rebecca, this 0 degree Sagittarius, which was like the thing that gave the tone of the next 30 years of your life, like a background for the next 30 years, starting from 2015. The Sabian symbol for that is retired army veterans gather to reawaken old memories. So retired veterans are trying to reawaken old memories. I think that sounds familiar and kind of gives like a picture in our head of what it could mean to have moon in the balsamic phase natally, like those memories, those, you know, you have traveled a long way, now you're coming to the end of a cycle. So I thought that was very interesting. That was very interesting because it kind of gives us a clue that those 30 years is so much about trying to dig back into some sort of past and find something there, or reconcile something there, and find, like, try to build a bridge between the past and the future, so that you can build a future for yourself. You need to somehow do some reconsideration about the past, or remembering something. So yeah, that's it for me for now. Rebecca, are you with us still? Do you want to comment
Can you
on
hear me?
anything?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, pretty much. Basically what that is, you know, what I'm currently doing. Well, let's start at the beginning. Yes, on pretty much everything said. A lot of emphasis on childhood and you know, learning and stuff. A lot of restriction that came through childhood as well in the, you know, middle and later part of childhood. Currently, I'm going through therapy to release all that stuff. So a lot of release and a lot of learning. I feel like when I'm in therapy, it's me talking just to figure out what I'm feeling. A lot of healing in regards to being able to express my anger, which I never thought I was able to, but now I am. It's great, but it's square Mars. Definitely that. Sorry, there's a lot of background. But yeah, it's basically everything that was said was true on different levels. My moon struggles to feel stable, but I think now that I'm older and I've had more experience behind my days, feeling more stable now. My vocation is the arts. I'm constantly creating and doing things, either writing or on stage or vocalizing. So right on the money with all that stuff. So I think the biggest issue with that square has been learning to express my anger and not trying to step it down or anything.
I just missed the last part of what you said about. So what did you say was the major issue with the Mars? Okay, I think we are losing connection. She's coming back now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, so that's it. That was it.
What was it that you were saying was the major issue with the Mars for you?
Right. Being able to comfortably express my anger. And I've played sports my whole life, so I think playing sports has been a great outlet for moving emotions through my body. Yeah, just now that I'm older, I'm able to more comfortably express my anger and what I feel versus what I was taught in childhood. So now that I'm older, I'm like, you know what, I don't have to think about everyone all the time. If I don't want.
Right. So instead of constantly adapting, you are now thinking that maybe everything should be a bit more genuine so that you have a chance for the voice to be heard in a way.
Exactly. Yes, I'm no longer adapting to other people. Well, at least I'm on my journey to knowledge. So, yeah.
You mentioned you were writing, and that could be a great outlet for the moon in Libra, positioned where it is positioned in the third house. Also, this Chiron as an expression in Gemini can be part of the way to maybe one way to express will be through writing. And I guess the more there is something of a memoir part of the writing, the more you are in line with the moon phase as well.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you.
Just a thought. Any other comments? Yeah. Anybody else wants to comment on? Yeah, Stephen.
Okay. Well, when going back to the relationship of the theme of today about moon and emotional difficulties, what struck me initially, Ray, was this conjunction you have of the sun to Pluto itself within the orb of Pluto to, sun to Mercury. So this kind of like a 1 degree comes in the Arabic term of Kazimi. So the idea for you as a young person living in LA, this in your 4th house, don't know your earlier, what referred to in the literature, adverse childhood experiences, but the idea of your experience of any kind of emotional trauma would have been easily invaginated into your sense of balance and judgment of this Libra moon. So what you were saying earlier about the square of your moon to Mars as far as the thing of anger, well, actually, you recognize injustice at a very early age, as even a little girl, injustice to yourself, injustice to people around you. And this had a sense of engendering a sense of of indignation that you really didn't understand, but you knew it had to be balanced, but you didn't have the tools for it. So the idea here of you as a courtesy of sorts, the blessing is the curse of having though Pluto in a 1 degree basically conjunction with your sun allows you an ability to see deep underneath the surface of things, not only of other people, but more significantly within yourself. So you have a tendency to be so hypercritical that in one way you go, I'm not good enough, meaning this Libra moon sense of harmony, and how much I ever try, I can never improve myself. But now you're coming up on your 39th birthday, and now you have the opportunity to look at these tools and go, all right, these are the tools I have. I can chip away at the sense of social injustice, to have an understanding about it, but I should avoid chipping away at myself that I'm not good enough to meet the societal standards, when the societal standards are in fact part of the social injustice that we all have to experience. Now, I know we're short on time, and I try to get a lot of that in just a few sentences, but that's what I wanted to share.
Stephen, thank you so much. I think
Thank you.
I really believe in a lot of what you said, that it might be really to the point. So I hope it makes sense to you, Rebecca, in some way in your life.
Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Great. Well, I'm sorry to rush it like this. I really wanted to look at the second example because I promised, and also because it's going to be such a good, I believe, contrast to what we just saw. We are going to do it more quickly because we already talked about, the process, but I'll give you another chance to comment after that. The second example is Ildiko. Ildiko, are you here?
Hello, yes, I'm here. Yes, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so you are from Romania, is that right?
I was born there, yes, but at the moment I live in the UK at the moment.
Okay, you're a bit like me. Okay, well, I don't know you. We've never met before. I've seen the chart just for the first time, but I decided to pick it because there were so many things there, which, now we'll take a look together. So this is the chart. And I will go quickly through the same process. Now, can you see it all?
Yes, I can see. Yeah.
Perfect. Right. So let's start with the new moon before you were born. What was that cycle under which you were born? We see you are a sun in Leo. So you are Leo. And you are the other case, like as a contrast to Rebecca, who had the new moon in a sign which is before the sun. Now here, the new moon happened in Leo. So it's in the same sign in which the sun is. So this is like let's not make too much of a big deal out of it, but it's a reinforcement of the Leo sun, and it's really shining in its own realm, in its own month in a way. So the 4th degree, or the 5th degree actually, 4 degrees, some minutes, Leo, this is your new moon before birth. And that happened about 2 weeks before you were born, actually exactly 2 weeks before you were born. And the Sabian symbol for that is rock formations towering over a deep canyon. So rocks over a canyon. This is the idea. Something is at the brink of wanting to express itself. Something has been holding on for a long time and now needs to happen, finally burst out. We don't know what it is, but this is like an ongoing theme. Now, let's leave that here. Go next to the next thing. You were not born on an out of bounds moon, and you were not born on a void moon. Yeah, these things are not in your case, so that's fine. But your moon is slow. Her moon was fast. So here is another contrast. From what I read, the slow moon is a bit more skeptical, a bit more cautious, doesn't reveal itself so quickly and so easily, but usually waits to see how a situation is going to develop or how a relationship is going to develop before it jumps to conclusions. It takes its time to think more carefully about matters and then to make a decision, while the fast one would be just the opposite. So I hope this just gives you a little nuance and it somehow makes sense within your context. So your inner emotional world is supposed to be a little bit slower to react. But in the context of what we're going to see next, the rest of the chart about the moon, I would suspect that this is something that has to be slightly overcome. That in your particular case, we need to quicken things up a little bit more, to challenge you to be a bit more courageous and willing to take a risk about something than you would normally be willing to do. So you'll see hopefully later why I'm telling you that. Then the next thing is that you are one of those very, very interesting cases of someone born exactly on a full moon. Yeah, so that phase of the moon is not just a full moon, but it's exactly full moon. So you can see here in the table, the sun and the moon are exactly opposite. So you have sun in 17 Leo, while the moon is in 17 Aquarius. And that's like, I wouldn't have wished for a better example, because today we're talking about the moon, the cycle of the moon, all the different phases and all the different effects that the moon has on us and so on. And she's the most powerful at the full moon. She's culminating, like having the peak of her cycle with the sun at the full moon. This is the middle of the journey. So the journey starts at the new moon. Half of it is like actional, exploration, so on, until it reaches the full moon, where we need to, it's like midlife crisis. Yeah, the full moon is a little bit like midlife crisis. When you are around 40, 42 years old and you are entering a completely different stage of your life, you need to adjust to the idea that things happened before that. There were experiences, there were, things, various things, good or bad, traumatic or happy. And for the first time, during the full moon, ideally are able to figure out what was this all about. Almost like it's a moment of revelation, a moment of waking up from a dream and seeing for the first time how things are in reality. This is the most objective of all the phases of the moon, presumably. I mean, you may not be very objective, but this is what is supposed to be expected here. And but when you see things clearly, you may not be very happy. So that also tends to be one of the most depressive phases of the moon, because you feel that something wasn't done fully, that there could have been, that something might have been missed or not done right in the past. So there is this tendency of thinking very strongly about what went wrong in the past and trying to compensate for whatever you think you didn't manage to do, or you worry about the future at the same time. So it's like, it's a very tense relationship. So an opposition between the sun and the moon. They are pulled from two different directions. And there is like, one wants to go in one direction, the other one in another. And they also see each other like in a mirror. So the moon sees herself in the mirror of the sun and the other way around. So that's another reason why this is such a revelation kind of phase. But mostly that phase of the journey of the sun and the moon requires that the person takes a risk and is not afraid of conflict, not afraid of, kind of going into something that's a little bit scary. Taking a chance, basically, that's one very big part of it. Of course, you need to be careful not to take unnecessary risks and do something stupid or too much. But the tendency in the whole chart is rather to have been very cautious, maybe even in previous lives, because the moon is connected to the karmic nodes, and the south node is giving us a little bit about what you are used to in the past and what's the habit of the past. And that with you was Taurus, this very peacekeeping and grounded sign, Taurus, who might have been wanting to kind of have security and safety at all costs. So it was very needed to be stable and to be secure, to the expense of some life experiences which were not lived. And now in this lifetime, you may have the chance to live them, to express them, to basically go in the deep water. So we have clues about, this is my thesis, like this is my way of seeing it is because of also the other things about your moon. The fact that the moon is in the 9th house, where it's seeking to liberate itself, to open its horizon, to find new things, foreign things, things that it hasn't been in touch with before, and kind of open up to those new experiences. It's much more than that, but we don't have the time to go deeper. Also, the actual degree in which the moon is in Aquarius. Let's check what was the Sabian symbol for that. So that is a person being unmasked at a masquerade. So unmasking. Like, I had a feeling that in your life, there might be something. There might have been that something in previous life, which was kind of left undone, and now it's coming back and you have a chance to do it. There is something like, before it was not possible to express something or to be something or to kind of participate in something because there were certain restrictions, maybe from society or from, I don't know, you wanted to do something forbidden, or you wanted to do something that you just didn't have the chance to do because you didn't have access to it. I don't know exactly what it is, but now you have like an open door, and that could be done as long as you're willing to reveal yourself, as long as you're willing to take off the mask. This is kind of where I'm going with this. And the opposition with the sun is really like this sense of urgency. It's like midlife crisis, which this phase can be compared to, is that moment in life when the planet Uranus is opposite to its natal place. So the so-called Uranus opposition. And it has something similar to that there. That at that moment we feel like there is no time. We have to act quickly. We have to now speed up because the thing that we want might not be available for a long time. Almost like trying to catch up with youth, trying to catch up with something material maybe. But in your case, I'm mentioning Uranus because your north node, like the opposite to the Taurus past, is conjunct Uranus. So the mission of this lifetime is something to do with taking a risk and daring to do something unusual, daring to do something which may be shocking for others. So I don't know exactly what this could be, but definitely something to do with experimentation and with taking a risk, because it's also in the 5th house, the 5th house of spontaneity, self-expression, and taking a risk. So these two nodes, one with Chiron, one with Uranus, they square your moon and they square your sun. So the sun-moon opposition is also related to the nodes in the chart, which is a very big deal. Like the moon is extremely under pressure in that chart, even more than in the previous chart that we saw, because she's part of I think this is called a grand cross. So you see this crossing from 4 different places. So we have the Taurus, south node with Chiron. We have the Scorpio, north node with Uranus, the Leo, sun with Saturn, and the moon in Aquarius. So they cover all the 4 fixed signs in the zodiac. Yeah, so you have a fixed cross. I think the fixity of the chart, a lot of fixed energy, which tends to go in circles. Yeah, repeat the same thing, come back to the same thing as it used to be. Very difficult to get out of a situation which is repeating itself, or just simply being very loyal to something and staying with it for a long time, maybe even longer than it's necessary. I think that's something which is similar to having the moon being slow to react, because the fixed energies are the slowest to change, the slowest to make a move to a different direction. And you have this major configuration in the fixed signs, part of which is the moon. What else is interesting about the moon? The aspects. So the square to Venus, no, this is Uranus, sorry, this is something else square to Venus, not the moon. Let me just take a look at my notes. So it's opposition to Saturn and the sun, but not exactly. I mean, it's quite wide. Then you have a square to the nodes, 9 degrees, which we just mentioned. We have trine to Pluto down here in Libra. So you see all those lines which start from the moon and go somewhere, they're the ones that need to be followed. So you can see what sort of communication lines she's got with the other parts of the chart. But this thing about this, the cross is so powerful that I suspect it overwhelms everything else. And so that's something to explore in your own time. What else? So the moon is ruled by Uranus. So because she's in Aquarius, she's ruled by Uranus. Uranus is in a relationship with her already because of the aspect, and is so crucially conjunct the North Node of the moon. So that's like, these things are connected. That's what I'm trying to say. Uranus is a very big influence on the moon. So maybe that's another support of my suggestion and guess that you need to do something a bit more extreme. You need to muster up courage to get out of a situation which is clogged, which is somehow beyond its usefulness already, or to overcome a restriction. Something or someone has been restricting you for a very long time, and this chart is kind of giving an instruction to try to overcome the restriction and to explore a little bit without so much fear. And that's likely to do with relationships. That's likely to do with self-expression, with your own creativity, your own kind of feeling good in your own skin. It might be that for a long time you didn't feel good in your own skin because there were things that were pressing you or making you feel bad about yourself in one way or another. Well, this chart is basically urging you to relax into your own desires and things that you want to express. So 5th house, Uranus, North Node here, and they are pressing on the moon. But the moon is obviously also wanting to kind of not be restricted anymore. The other two arms of the big like cross or rectangle that we can see here in the chart, this one is with Chiron, some sort of wound, some sort of repression. The other one, the sun, is with Saturn. Again, something is putting restrictions. While the moon and the North Node with Uranus, they want to be liberated. So I thought this is a very interesting contrast between two forces, equally strong, equally insistent, that you may feel like you cannot reconcile with them because you want to keep stability, you want to keep predictability and not become some sort of ostracized person or something like that. But at the same time, you want to get something expressed which is waiting to be expressed. So that's just roughly what I think about this. And then let's move on to the progressions. So you have a chance also to comment on that, and without us going too much over time. So your progressions at the moment, this is again the chart in the middle, the red. Ignore the green one for the moment because this is a transit of today, of just a few days ago, and now the progressions at the last wheel. The moon is, look where it is at the moment. The progressed moon is in 1 degree Scorpio currently, and that happens to be the area of your North Node with Uranus. So that's one of the 4 corners of this square configuration or cross configuration that you have in your chart that we just talked about. This whole thing is now being activated by the moon, the progressed moon, being exactly here. Well, the progressed Venus is there too, which just adds even more pressure to the same thing, to the same story. But because we're focusing on the moon today, this is extremely important activator. A button is being pushed, and you're being really, especially because it's the North Node. The North Node is like the wake-up call that the moon is currently giving you, probably emotionally, without even, again, this is uncontrollable, your emotions currently, and since very recently, because your progressed moon only about a month ago moved from Libra to Scorpio, and now is right in the beginning of Scorpio, and will be there for the next 2.5 years. This moon in Scorpio is now kind of switching to Scorpio mode emotionally. And doing that, you are getting in tune temporarily with what your North Node wants from you. What is the lesson that you need to learn? What is the path in this particular lifetime? And currently, especially in the next few months, we're talking in the next 6 months, mostly, you're going to get more and more and more of a feel through the way you feel. Watch your moods, watch your emotions, watch your memories. They're going to give you a lot of information, a lot of clue about what it is that you need to give to yourself. Not just right now, but in general, in order to work on the balancing of the nodes and to feed the moon the way that the moon needs to be, with the kind of food that the moon needs to be fed. Yeah, I hope that makes some sort of sense to you. And before I shut up, last thing which I shouldn't miss, because it's again very important for you, is that the sun and the moon here, these two, in the progressions, they were together pretty recently. So that same thing which we said about Rebecca that happened in 2015 for her, for you happened in 2021, so just about 2 years ago. And the date is the 22nd of June, 2021 was when the sun and the moon in the progressed chart began a new 30-year cycle together. So very recently is when your new cycle started. So it's like you now have a chance to reinvent yourself in many ways, in many different ways. And that's going to be a long process. You shouldn't expect results straight away, but it's just kind of switching to a new direction. And that happened in 0 degrees Libra. So the sun and the moon were together at 0 degrees Libra. So that's the chart of that moment, that day, 22nd of June, 21. And you can see the sun and the moon together here in the 3rd house. And 0 Libra is a butterfly preserved and made perfect with a dart through it. This is the Sabian symbol for that particular degree. So I don't know what to say about this, but from looking at that chart of this moment, we can just register quickly that this new moon had very positive aspects to it. No squares, no oppositions, a nice sextile to the ascendant and trine to Jupiter here. And I believe that this new cycle that began for you in 2021 is a real chance for a positive resolution of tension which you have been feeling all your life, but there was no kind of proper conditions so far for that to start resolving itself. But ever since that new cycle began, I think you are on the road towards something new. So it's just to say, take advantage of that as much as you can. And it's mostly to do with relationships. There is a lot to be gained from relationships, a lot to be learned there. And you see this chart is very obvious that a lot is to do with one-to-one interaction and not to be scared to go far into that. Right. The opposition that you have in your chart between the sun and the moon, this full moon thing, is the epitome of relationship. When the sun is opposite the moon, they relate, they talk to each other, they serve as mirrors to each other. So that's where the drama can be expected, mostly. All right, so I'll go back to the chart itself. Well, we didn't look at that. This is what your progressed moon is doing at the moment with the other planets. I would just point out that it's exactly opposite Chiron. So you might want to go and take a look at that, but exactly sextile Venus. So another point which supports my view of relationships are now important to be given a chance in one way or another. Okay, so I'll go back to the actual chart. So we look at it, and now you can tell us a bit about yourself if you want to, and whether you recognize anything in what I said to be relevant to you.
Yes, definitely. It was so useful. Thank you very much. And it was very interesting, although I am myself an astrologer, but not with a great experience. And I've never kind of heard that sort of interpretation about my moon. And yes, it was very interesting. It's very interesting that you chose me because as you could see that the moon is going over my ascendant as we speak. So
yes. Oh yeah, I didn't notice that.
daily moon, yeah, is going over.
If we look here, we
Yeah.
can see that here very clearly.
Yeah.
Because these are the transits on the green wheel, and here the moon currently, yes, is exactly on your.
Yes, and talking about the moon as well. Yes, I am. What you said about daring, I'm a very daring person. But I don't know. I think up until now, I was so afraid of the society around me. You know, the rules of the society, because I am a rule breaker as well.
Yeah.
You know, I'm the black sheep. I've always been, and just up until recently, I tried to play by the rule. You know, like I tried to live a life that the society and the people around me were expecting me to live, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't. So obviously I divorced. I'm a single mom. You know, I've traveled abroad. I traveled into many places. I drag my son around, who is 12, to those places where I live, and I think it looks like I'm shocking my you know, the people around me, like my family, and everybody is so shocked that how can I do that, or how am I so daring, and all that sort of stuff. Just recently, an astrologer friend of mine said that, you know, I'm such a free-spirited person that, and although I try to fit myself in a circle, I cannot, because I'm a square. And I think that's when I understood that, you know, this is why I feel unsuccessful in life, because I do, you know, I did want to live a life what society was expecting off of me, to get married and to lead a decent life, you know, and I did that despite me not being fulfilled, not feeling fulfilled.
Right.
So I divorced now, and I'm trying to follow that route. And that you pointing out that my moon is just kind of, you know, pushing the buttons. I'm so glad to see that, because I've always wondered, what is that Uranus North Node conjunction? What is that? You know, what is my purpose? I feel it's astrology, because with the new moon, I started, like, before I was always like a hobby astrologer, and around the new moon cycle, the progress new moon cycle, I started learning astrology like a bit more seriously. And, although I'm a teacher, which I really enjoy, but there are lots of restrictions around it, lots of hard work around it. And I would like to reinvent myself as an astrologer and make a living out of astrology. So maybe the Uranus North Node is pointing to that. I'm not sure.
Oh, yes. Well, it won't be possible to say that this means exactly astrology, but astrology can fit the picture if this is what you choose to be the thing. Because the kind of knowledge gives a lot more room for, you know, not being within the boundaries of some sort of teaching or science which is already established and already framed. You can be let's say, a bit more free to express whatever your intuition or a little bit more special knowledge leads you to. The most important point is probably here in this 5th house, and to me the houses are even more important than the signs, is that you have to not be afraid to do whatever your own interest, your own instinct and desire to express, you like thinking of who you are and what you want to do. What you shared is so, I mean, I'm so glad that we had a bit of feedback from you so far, because it's so like to the point of this opposition aspect between the sun and the moon. And many people don't like the traditional family setting and they move away from it when they have moon opposite sun. It's not guaranteed it's going to be the case every time, but maybe it was a good thing for you that you went your own way, as that's part of what the moon needs. Traveling with your sun, that's so much the 9th house moon in Aquarius as well. And I think you have to also, I guess, on back to your question about the node, when the progressed moon and sun were together for the new cycle in 21, that was 0 degrees of Libra, which means that that coincided exactly with the moment when the progressed sun moved to a new sign. So from Virgo to Libra. So these two things are 2 events in the progressions, which if we see them separately, they're both extremely important. In your case, they both happened at the same time, which I think is great. I mean, it's so interesting because not only the sun itself started a new 30-year cycle in a new sign, but it was joined by the moon. So that particular new beginning is extreme new beginning. And so you have to maybe look back to that chart, seeing that happened in the 3rd house, which is so often connected to teaching, to exchange of information, to new knowledge, to delving into a new field maybe of knowledge. And I don't know how you would like to be an astrologer, whether you want to do consultations more, you want to, but from what you said, maybe you want to really teach and give consultations, which is so much Libra.
Yes, I think I would like to teach it as well as give consultations. That
I feel like you might be very good in that if you decide to give it a go, because there are energies in the chart which are very much supportive for that sort of work. Katarina.
I'd love to. I'd love to. But as you said, I can feel the process is very slow. So the new moon phase of obviously in a progress chart is like a dark moon phase, like things as they don't really
show up again, immediately.
It doesn't. It is a very slow process, and I understand because of the long cycle that it became under.
Exactly.
So that's okay. I mean, I love teaching as well, but I would really, really, really like to move over to leave like classic teaching behind and teach rather astrology and consult astrology.
That's great, because you see here also the trine to Jupiter in the 11th house of relating now with maybe a wider public, a wider audience, where you can pass on a message which is also quite Aquarian, because we're alluding back to your moon in Aquarius. And that Jupiter gives a very good support to the new cycle.
I never thought to look at this chart. Thank you very much. I never looked at that ingress chart or the Newman chart.
I did it because it happened to you so recently. So that is very recent. I mean, it wasn't like 20 years ago. It would be maybe if we want to dig in the past and find some answers why something happened the way it happened, we can look back at the progress new moon 20 years ago, but the yours is only 2 years ago, and this is really the beginning of something, which is still the beginning of something.
It was very interesting because when I found out, I was actually in an astrology course, when I found out that I am about to begin a brand new phase by the progress sun changing sign, as well as having a new moon. So I was actually in an astrology course when we were analyzing my chart, and then the teacher told me. So
that's great. Well, you were born a Leo sun, and those last 30 years, without the last 2, it was traveling to a sign which was very different from it. Now that it came to Libra, it's another chance to kind of come back to yourself more, to what you originally are, what you originally, because these two are now in a natural sextile, the original sun with the new sun. So another reason why that particular transition might be quite opening for you.
Yeah.
I think Katarina wants to say something.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Adelina.
You're welcome.
Can we go back to just her natal chart real quick?
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I'm so interested by this because this grand cross with the moon and is so interesting. I really simply read the moon as the mother, the emotions, the body, and opposing Saturn. And some people translate the father or patriarchy as the son, but I always read it as Saturn. Or I ask the question, is there some kind of opposition with Saturn, fatherland, patriarchy? And when I originally saw her name, Ildiko Egyed, I know this is Magyar, Hungarian.
Yes, I am Hungarian, yeah.
Romanian part of,
Yes.
Slovenia. And that you've disclosed that you're now in London. So she's made this radical transition to shatter this grand cross with that Uranian North Node in the 5th house through creativity, through unusual raising of, children, 5th house is children, creativity, sensuality, play. So it's really exciting to see this expansion, and that it makes sense that it would shatter that your family or culture, motherland, homeland, fatherland of origin, and that it would be shocking to your family. But so is that the case?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And I did have a difficult relationship with my father. My mother has passed on 17 years ago. So, the family circumstances are, not very easy. And just recently, and I had so difficult relationship with my father. And just recently I did a past life regression. And I feel this is like, I'm talking like actually a week ago. And I feel that relationship is now shifting. So there is healing taking place, and I'm so glad.
That's great.
Yes, maybe that's the moon entering, the progressed moon entering Scorpio. Is finally taking a look at long-term emotional, deep, hidden, whatever, not very comfortable issues, and starting to reconcile.
Yeah, I did the regression under the Capricorn full moon just recently. So it was also an 8th house. I'm using whole sign astrology. So for me, it was the 8th house full moon. It was so relevant. It's unbelievable when I did the regression.
Right. Maybe it's also very important to know that the closest aspect, the closest square in this whole thing is between Saturn and the nodes. So the Saturn is the big thing that I think Katarina very well kind of spotted is the thing to move away from or to overcome or to counteract or whatever. It just happens to be also the source of life next to it. So that's why it's difficult, because it's not just about rejecting something, moving away from it and doing something opposite, but you have to integrate the opposition itself to go back to the original and integrate it to yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we are already, a bit over time, but that's my fault because I went so long in the first part. I hope it was somehow interesting because I tried to give you all sorts of different angles of the moon. Any comments you want to make? Any questions? Anybody? You look tired now. I know you're tired. Sorry to keep you so much. Okay, well, shall we leave it then for next time to continue? You probably guess already what the next topic is going to be. We started with the nodes. Today we talked about the moon. So I thought naturally next time we have to talk about the sun and how we can find ways to activate the sun. So he really assumes the role of the ruler of the chart, as I believe personally is what it's supposed to do, but it's so difficult. So yeah, in 2 weeks on Saturday again, same time, same place, I will send you an email with an invitation, and you will get another one before that with the recording of this. Yeah. Anything you want to comment or say?
I thought it was super interesting.
Thank you, Thor. Was it very difficult to follow with all those details about different stuff? Should I make it more concise next time?
It worked for me.
Worked for you? Good. It's not gonna be that way next time because the moon is the most detailed thing. Yeah, it's got all sorts of progressed moon, new moon before birth, this moon, the other moon. Well, the sun is more straightforward. Yeah. Yes, Cindy.
So I had to leave and I came back, and so I didn't get to hear the second, but it was really great for you to, I mean, the opportunity for everyone to share and to hear, and your analysis of all the different parts of the moon was extraordinary. I mean, you covered everything and you did a really thorough job, and it was really great. And I'm looking forward to attending these every 2 weeks but I missed the nodes, but it was.
And we'll have a chance to speak just face to face very soon as well.
We like the nodes.
Yeah.
Okay, it was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Thomas.
Hi. So thank you for a lovely presentation. And I can see that there's many different variables to interpreting the moon. I'm fairly sort of new on my astrology journey, but historically, you know, I'll generally look at the house and the sign and the aspects, and that kind of tells a kind of a primary story. Do you think that when you look at the other variables, the angles, the Sabian symbols, do they kind of reflect the same story in different ways? Do you find that it all kind of sits together?
Yeah.
And what would you, I mean, I know you've probably already answered this question, but are there, in order of importance, what do you think are the key variables? Because you had like all those variables, but they weren't listed in order of importance.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm just interested to know what are the key parts. I know the sun and moon sort of together was one of them, but it'd be good just to get a sense of the priorities there.
I think they were a little bit in the order of importance.
Oh, really?
Not exactly, because some of them I can't say which one is more important than the other, but yeah, I think my personal rule will be to always start with a new moon before birth, before I look at anything else. I know I'm a little unusual with that because I just adopted that as my own way, because I discovered it's like, let's see on what ground we are starting. What is like the background for that chart? And then I look at the chart. And then the Sabian symbols, again, for me are very important, because I hope you were able to see how revealing they were. And also to come to that conclusion you got, that everything at the end of the day leads back to the same main idea, main principle or issue that the person is dealing with. But I think maybe we went a bit too far today, because we are doing this as a workshop. And that was the idea. But if you're still quite new to astrology, or maybe even not that new, but if you want to be, say, more helpful sometimes to a client, it might be good not to do all of this, to be honest. I not always do all of this. I just wanted to give you all, because you can pick and choose which of those elements might be part of your way of working, if you wish to, or for yourself. But sometimes if we have less, we can achieve more. So by just looking at the sign, house, but I start with the house and then this. So house is a bit more important for me personally than sign. That's why I don't want to go into the house system argument, which one to use, which one not to use. Use whatever you want, but I think it's important. That's like one of the crucial decisions an astrologer has to make. Which house system, whether to go with whole houses or to go with not whole houses. And so from there, a lot of other things follow. That's just me, you know. I hope I answered at least a little bit. Yeah.
So do you think angles, I mean, were angles more important than, if there's some debate over the house, like obviously the angle is...
You know, I just thought, considering how important it turns out to be when someone has a planet on an angle, or the big difference it makes if the planet is sitting in one house or the next or previous house, how much that in real life happenings, the real, like what's going on in their life, the events which most people are interested in at the end of the day, where life pulls you to participate in, that's so crucial and so important that when I realized that, I knew that I have to make a decision on the house system. Whether I made the right decision, I don't know yet. I still have doubts because some of my, I definitely 100% would never use a how is it called? At the moment, it's escaping me. I would always use a space-based system. There are several of them. I would never use whole sign or equal house because I really don't think this is totally like negating the houses to the expense of the zodiac. Yeah, but they're equally important, and houses are extremely important to me. So I don't know yet whether it will be Campanus, Regiomontanus, or Placidus, or there are a couple more maybe that I would consider. Currently, I'm doing Regiomontanus, and I like the results. But this is a philosophy, I think, like a philosophy of the astrologer, that this is important, it has to be done, because yeah, angular planets, things on like aspecting the angles, I think this is very evidently true that it's playing out. I have my moon on my descendant, and it's been like ruling my life, literally. So yeah, I don't know.
Thank you. It's really
This
clear.
is just my way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cindy.
Well, I was just going to respond, and I think what Thomas is asking lots of questions, and this is just an extension in terms of doing interpretation, because in taking the course with Stephen Forrest, you do the nodal axis to begin, and it's the moon, the sun, and the ascendant. And I'm just adding that in addition to what your outline of things. So
let's just slightly say something here. So the thing that combines the sun, the moon, and the ascendant is something else. It's not the nodes. Yeah, the nodes are so much about the sun and the part of fortune, and we just didn't have the time to go towards the part of fortune today. Again, another thing that most people will say, I won't even put it in the chart. This is not so important. But the moment you realize that the part of fortune is the balancing point between the moon, the sun, and the ascendant, then you might change your mind next time you look at it, because it really is powerful. And in the first example, Rebecca's chart, I don't know if you guys noticed that her moon was squaring on the one hand this Mars that we talked about, and then on the other side it was squaring the part of fortune. And that was making like one exact triangle, which just if we had more time, I probably would have gone there as well, because I think that's important. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. I won't keep you any longer. See you the week after next. And yeah, take care of yourselves.
thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Radley.